Yes, thank you so much for the nice introduction, also the invitation to actually talk about the government and the art of infrastructure maintenance. So my name is Mirko Swillus. I'm the head of the Sovereign Tech Fund, which is a partner of the Sovereign Tech Agency, and what that is and what that entails, we will talk about in a minute. Little bit about myself. So I'm an engineer, software engineer by trade. So I started as a software engineer, then moved over to software architecture, and then also into engineering management. And then 1.5 years ago, I joined the Sovereign Tech Fund. And when we talk about infrastructure and maintenance, maybe it's good to understand what for me, from my perspective, is infrastructure really about? So what is infrastructure for me? And it started with a kind of a personal journey for me, and then that kept me, reminded me on when we started with local networking back then by the end of the 90s already. And that was when next door to me, friends moved in, like students back then, and we wanted to connect our computers with each other, right? And we used cheap Ethernet, like the 10BASE-2 coaxial cables with those terminators that you had to use and all that. And but we had a very heterogeneous network infrastructure back then. So we had like Windows 95 computers, Windows 98, but also Linux machines, because we had some nerds among us, right? And a little Linux server there as well, a Debian machine, I believe. And then we wanted to use to share files with each other, because that's what we did back then, right? When we were young, we just had a bunch of MP3s, and I believe all of them legally purchased, and we wanted to share them on a file share with each other, right? And that's where Samba came in, of course, because that was the technology that was already there. People, I believe in them, you know it way better than me, but reverse engineered the protocol in the beginning to just make things interoperable with each other that weren't supposed to connect to each other that well, right? And that was when that was one of the moments where I discovered, okay, this is technology, this is actually open standards as well, and that makes it possible to connect to each other. So that was my journey into engineering a little bit as well, but also into networking and into open source, right? So with the Linux machines. Now, fast forward 25 years, 27 years, maybe even into what I do today. So I, as I said, am a member of the Sovereign Tech Agency, and now there's coming up on the machine, which is bad, but okay. The Sovereign Tech Agency has this kind of mission statement, so we are supporting the development, improvement, and maintenance of open digital infrastructure, and our goal is to sustainably strengthen the open source ecosystem. And we are an agency that is commissioned by the German Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action, so we're actually the public, right? And we commission, contract open source maintainers, small legal entities, but also bigger ones, with service contracts, so that those maintainers can actually work on the maintenance of open source infrastructure. That's what we do, that's our core mission. And when the Sovereign Tech Fund was created 3 years back, I think one of the big achievements of the founders actually was to convince the government, the ministry, that open source has no borders, so we can do this actually globally. So there's no, it's German taxpayers' money, of course, but we can spend it worldwide, because they convinced the government that open source does not have any borders, and that it's a global phenomenon, and wouldn't make any sense to just, contract German small entities with this kind of work, maintenance work. So that's what we do. I talk a little bit about our programs and our other instruments that we developed. But for now, just a little bit about infrastructure, open source infrastructure, and the success. So I just copied this from the last recent Black Duck analysis they put out, where they analyzed commercial code bases. And one thing that stand out is like the 97% that has open source in the commercial code bases today, and that number is growing, was growing over the past years, and now it's 97. Actually, not a surprise for me. I just wonder where those 3% are. So what's that actually? Is it like, you know, the COBOL or Fortran things, or what kind of legacy stuff we talk about? But I think from my perspective, I truly believe there isn't anything like proprietary software anymore in the moment, because when you look at the different, you know, components of infrastructure today, of software engineering, you have at some point, or always you have, be it in the tooling like CI/CD, or be it in the way how you operate the application, there is open source involved, right? It's a huge success. And that's an achievement of the open source community, and I may say of you, right? Of the open source engineers communities out there globally who are actually maintaining those infrastructure components as well. So it's a huge success, but there's also challenges. And this kind of thing, you know, I believe it's the XKCD comic that we put on every slide, so I had to put it here as well. It's like this, we always talk about this little building block over here. That's why we created the Sovereign Tech Fund and the Sovereign Tech Agency. We want to make sure that this whole building doesn't collapse. And there's a little bit of a misconception here, because people might think when you secure this little building block over here, then you're safe and you're done. Actually, it's thousands and tens of thousands of those little things that you have to make sure that they are maintained well. We took it even so far to engrave it, like laser grave it on bottles at some point. And yeah, there's this one paper we really love within the Sovereign Tech Agency. It's some years old already, and it has this nice, you know, analogy of roads and bridges. So that's actually the name of the paper, and it does this analogy between physical infrastructure and digital infrastructure. And there's also things in physical infrastructure that you don't see that often, that is invisible maybe, but physical infrastructure in its nature is most of the times very visible to the outside, right? We know which kind of bridges we use, we know the roads we use, and so on. Where digital infrastructure is sometimes a little bit invisible, like the small components. We did an investment in Log4j, for instance, that was very invisible until the point it wasn't, right? So, and that's the point we are trying to make sure that this is becoming visible. Back to this analogy, I come from Dresden, which is small town, or like, yeah, mid-sized town in East Germany. It's like 4 or 5 hours east from here. And we had a bridge collapsing last year, which was a huge thing in the city, because you don't, fortunately, nobody was hurt by that accident, right? So that's why we can make fun of it now, but still, it's a very, you know, a very visible crack in the foundation of our infrastructure. And actually, in Germany, I heard we have 8,000 of those bridges, right? And that's a huge, you know, investment that we have to undertake to actually maintain this physical infrastructure as well. But now coming back to the digital infrastructure again. The point when the Sovereign Tech Fund was created was, of course, in the consequence of Log4j, of Heartbeat, of all those incidents where it came very visible and known to the public that we have a problem here. So the Sovereign Tech Fund was created to actually address this problem with different instruments. Last year, we spun out as an own organization, so we are now an own legal entity, and we have several programs under the umbrella of the Sovereign Tech Agency, where the Sovereign Tech Fund is one of the main funds, the initiative which I'm leading currently. So that's just the mission statement of the Sovereign Tech Fund. So we invest in the development, improvement, and maintenance of open digital-based technology, like worldwide. And I believe it's around 60 technologies in our portfolio, so to say, currently. And one of the case studies I brought to you is Samba. So that's also that got published some weeks back already, where we invest in the Samba ecosystem and infrastructure as well to maintain, to make the maintenance, to enable the maintenance of this component as well. And yeah, that's just one of the many projects that we do. And this is about maintenance, really. So usually when you have a product or something that you can also monetize in the open source ecosystem, you might have a customer, you might have someone who's willing to pay for this or that feature, but maintenance oftentimes is difficult to monetize and to finance just through feature development, right? So maintenance is often the part where projects struggle, even if they have a model to monetize the component, right? So that's an issue, and that's why we step in and try to help out here. I have to say we don't want to make ourselves infrastructure as well. So we don't want us to become infrastructure really, and to have many folks globally being dependent on us. So we want to develop sustainable models as well. So that's why we're also talking to industry currently. We want to combine efforts here to have also industry to step in. So in the US, we have programs like Alpha Omega, for instance, which is a program from Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, who are investing in security, open source security mainly, and there's other programs as well. And in Germany, we try to achieve something similar where we have industry chipping in and combining efforts here, because we believe it shouldn't be only the German taxpayer covering for those maintenance efforts. So that's currently going on to reaching out and trying to develop models that make this possible. Then there's other instruments in the portfolio of the Sovereign Tech Agency as well. So it's the Sovereign Tech Resilience Program, which is about security. That's maybe also one thing that I wanted to mention, that we are not only focusing on cybersecurity or IT security. We believe more in a holistic approach where cybersecurity, IT security is a very important outcome of our work, but it's not the only one. So we have this more holistic view that we believe in the people behind the code, and there's other things that we also try to achieve with our investment. It's not only security, it's also about accessibility and the freedom of choice and all that. So that's not necessarily security, but it's one of the things we look at. And this program specifically is about security audits, a bug bounty program, but also a fixed bounty, because we believe for open source communities, finding bugs and knowing about them is a good thing, but don't have any capacity to actually fix them, it would be a bad situation. So we're figuring out how we can, support with capacity to actually fix also vulnerability findings in those open source communities. And then a topic that's very core to my heart as well is the Sovereign Tech Fellowship, where we contract maintainers, open source maintainers directly. It's a pilot program that we developed last year and that started beginning of this year. We have 6 maintainers in that cohort currently. It's very diverse ecosystem, so it's Python, it's someone from curl as well, it's someone from the free desktop organization. So it's very different areas and also very different models of how we contract them, not from the contract, but from the weekly hours they work with us, because that's also something that we discovered earlier when we did the survey with the open source maintainers, that we have a very diverse situation within the open source maintainers community. So there's some folks who are really much into, okay, I want to work on this one like 40 hours a week, but then there's others who say, you know what, actually 6 hours a week, like 6 paid hours a week for my maintainer work, that would actually help me a lot, because then I can do the things that I have to do on the weekend and in the evening and in the night when I have all my personal life going on. I can have this paid and use my Friday, for instance, to actually work on those issues in a more focused way. So that's actually something that I feel is working very well, and we are piloting this right now. And then we are doing an evaluation, and then we are hopefully being able to scale this up to a point where we can also contract other open source maintainers as well worldwide. That's just a little survey I did last April with the open source maintainer community. You can see that like 525 people actually responded to this question about how do you feel about your current situation regarding compensation. And actually you can see that only the green and the light green pieces are actually the one that don't want to change anything about their compensation situation. All the others actually want to change something. And the biggest part is the gray piece over there with 174 people saying, currently I'm not getting paid as a maintainer, but I would like to. So this old, like there is some theory that money doesn't change too much here. So, and that's probably true because we have a huge diversity situation in the community as well. So we need to attract new talent coming in. It wouldn't, like if we just would have, I don't know, endless resources of money and just pouring it into the community, that wouldn't help. It wouldn't solve every problem, but money and getting people paid for their work on open source infrastructure is actually having an impact, and that's something that we try to demonstrate with this program as well. So with that, I just want to say thank you again for being part of that community. It's very nice to be here and to see you in action. Like those, I believe it's very crucial to the open source ecosystem that we have those communities that you stick together. I heard you doing like this conference for 24 years already, so that's a really long time. It's a good role model, I believe. You found models to actually have business models around the components, so that's very nice, and I just want to thank you for maintaining our public infrastructure. And yeah, with that, thank you, and then yeah, don't know if we have time for some questions if you're interested, but then I'll leave it with that for now. Thank you.